Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. The week begins on October 7th, and I'm talking about Monday, and I'm talking about Eastern Time Zone. So depending on where you live, you need to adjust, but I have to mark it somewhere, so that's the time zone I work from. And what's happening on October 7th is the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, when the moon's in Sagittarius, people tend to be curious. Of course, this is emphasized based on your personal astrology. Specific fire and air signs may be feeling this more so, but Moon in Sag is energetically about curiosity, stretching, wanting to go places that are new, exploration. It can be very risk-taking as well as even pugilistic, where people are quick to fire up tempers or act aggressively. It depends on other factors in a person's horoscope. But overall, I see a day, if I only know the moon is in Sagittarius, that there might be people watching a lot of sports events or whatever legal battle is happening, possibly things that have to do with foreign affairs. So we stretch, we take risks, we look at things that push us a little farther when the moon is in Sagittarius. Not everybody, obviously, but as I said, especially if that moon is striking or augmenting or emphasizing fire energy already in your horoscope. What is good is if you know your personal horoscope to look to see what houses, areas of life, is that moon transiting, because then that's showing you what area of life basically is the emotional focus of the day. And on this particular day, the 7th, what's happening is, because of how the moon travels through the sky and the geometric pictures it makes, it is really speaking about and maybe triggering, especially for those of us who are born with what we call hard aspects between the moon and Saturn. Or it may just be a transitory experience for you based on what's going on, a sense of, I'm not getting the support I need. People don't have the time I need from them. I don't have the financial support that I need. And for others, this is something that we've been dealing with from early childhood on. And ideally, as we mature, we get more perspective and objectivity about this innate sense that it's hard to get support, love, money. And oftentimes, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, yeah, I know that song, I've heard it many times. And if that's something you're working with, a reminder here is also, when we don't ask for it, when we don't expect it, it doesn't necessarily come. And if it does come, we may reject it or not even notice it or not trust it. So this day can be something that may or may not present that kind of challenge for you. But if it does, or if it's something you're reflecting on, there's always a lesson piece with Saturn. And again, this is a transit. It's moving through the sky. It's not like, oh, I have this horoscope and this is what I was born with, and this is one of the things that I have to work with in this lifetime, because I think that to receive anything, love or money, I have to work harder than everybody else or not even ask for it. So, because it's not going to come. And that sometimes is the biggest nut to crack, is learning to ask for help, learning to express need. Now, of course, there's the reverse, where some people always have their hand out or always expect someone to help them because that works for them. But I'm specifically addressing when one is feeling a sense of lack. And so we can learn on this day. The overall thrust of Monday and Tuesday is basically positioning us in a way where we can learn how to, because Sagittarius energy is the lifetime learner, also always questing, wanting to expand. And we can really learn over the next couple of days how to develop certain skills better. But first, we have to identify where we may be lacking or what we might want to shift in some way, either by gaining more information or changing our perspective on it. And the overall salve for making all this happen is implementing a spiritual practice, whatever it may be. Now, some of you listening may be thinking, well, yeah, okay, I hear about meditation or martial arts or going to a religious service, but it's just nothing I implement in my life. The thing about having a spiritual practice is it's essential that it fits who you are. And for many of us, that's a quest in life, to discover what is the fit. I mean, some of us are born into families where the religious or spiritual practice just is like a glove, and it feels so familiar and comforting, or challenging, depending on the practice. But it resonates with us. For many people, it's another experience. It may be some sort of childhood or familial connection that just doesn't make any sense or feel any validity to the individual. And some people find themselves coming back to it and have a reorientation as adults or through exploration, and others just, it's never going to fit because it just wasn't the right language or way of being for the person. And many people just don't bother to find some kind of spiritual practice. They don't feel the same yearning or need. Now, from my position as a person who teaches and works with metaphysics and spirituality and went through my own tremendously long journey, but for me, I realized a necessity. And yet I did what was the available, this is what we do, and self-medicated, drinking other forms of indulgence. And that kind of worked until it didn't. And when it didn't, I walked away from it. I had to find other methods. And that was when I dove in deep to different seeking, study, Reiki healing, meditation, studying tarot, yoga, yada, it went on and on and on and on. And it changed my life, obviously. And I know that when I see pictures in the sky, like the one I'm seeing for Monday and Tuesday, that those kind of spiritual practices allow us anchoring and a place to put all the restless energy, because there's a lot of it now. We can feel change. We sense everything's going to be different. And some of us have purpose and know exactly what we're doing every day. And even those people will have moments of, what the heck am I doing and why? So whatever works. I mean, I think a wonderful method for every human being on the planet is a walk in nature and real conscious observance of nature. I don't think it gets much more instantaneous than that. And, it's great. Meditation, yoga, all kinds of them. Going to a service that moves you. Music is enormous. But fit that in Monday, Tuesday at some point. Because if you don't have a methodology like this, these 2 days can feel difficult. Can feel a sense of, what is happening? And sometimes that's unavoidable because we're hearing a lot of noise and things are going on that cause people to stop, pause, even panic, because what the heck goes on with all this change, the unknown. And the unknown just is not that scary when we feel very connected to the natural world and the spiritual plane. It just is not that scary. So Tuesday is a highly creative day, I think, with implementing what I just talked about. Can really help that creativity and anchoring, as I said. And then we get into Wednesday. So this is what's happening Wednesday. The moon goes void of course at 1:54 a.m. And what that means is it's not making any more geometric aspects to other planets before it changes signs. And so we're just not that invested emotionally in what happens next. Now, Eastern time zone, a lot of folks may be sleeping. So it's the dream world, and that's a perfect way to use void of course time. Other ways is organizing, working on projects already in motion, clearing out old business clutter, things that just are getting in your way. The moon enters the sign of Capricorn at 5:38 a.m., but something else happens that evening or wee hours of the morning, and that's that Jupiter goes retrograde. Now, when Jupiter goes retrograde, which happens once a year and then is in retrograde for a few months, depending on how it's moving. But when it goes retrograde, things that were moving along, especially anything that had to do with money, investment, potential jobs, good things coming in, gets put on hold. Doesn't mean nothing happens. It just means the overall tone is to start to pull back. Now, we may not notice it right away, but it's where some of us are going to start feeling it over the next few days, couple of weeks for sure, especially those of us who are very Jupiterian people. So people with a lot of Sagittarius, Pisces, people who have Jupiter strongly aspected within their horoscope. These people tend to have a lot of buoyant optimism. It's just a quality that strong Jupiterian people have. Interestingly, we can observe people who have strong Jupiter who are in the news, celebrities, politicians, and once Jupiter goes retrograde, we will see how their seemingly endless luck or good fortune starts to taper back. I will talk more about that. I'm writing a blog about, again, the coming United States election, and especially how that Jupiter retrograde may be affecting certain candidates. Once the moon enters, so just to finish with Jupiter, as it's retrograde, it is not advisable to start a new business. Of course, it may depend what your business is. Also, to launch something that you've been wanting to launch, to do a pitch that's very important to you, approach someone who you're interested in lending you money or venture capitalism. All these things, when Jupiter is retrograde, it's not that they won't eventually happen, but people tend to be very much more cautious about what they're jumping into, investing in, and why. So when when the moon is in the sign of Capricorn, which it is basically all day on Wednesday the 9th as of 5:38 a.m. and on the 10th into the 11th. This is a really interesting few days. And I say that because when the moon's in the sign of Capricorn, there's a general emotional cautiousness. It's not that people can't be loving and affectionate and generous, but in the sign of Capricorn, there's a sense of, where am I going with this? Where is this taking me? So it doesn't mean that every conversation or relationship or place where people are going has to do with a strategy and what the outcome is. But there is a need for what's the productivity element here? What am I doing with this? So these couple of days are really great for aiming for something that you want a concrete goal from or product from. And this is especially strong for people who have a lot of earth in their horoscope, possibly water, Also, the other thing that's going on here is that this travel, as the moon travels over these next couple of days, it's really looking at how is this moving the needle? How am I doing something that's going to shift or get some sort of transformational result? And it is augmented, enhanced, if we are using that spiritual practice energy that I talked about earlier. So it's almost like the beginning of the week is saying, do I have things in place to carry me through some what may be hard negotiation or showing up for something that may be a bit of an investment or hard to do, knowing that Jupiter is retrograde. So we're in this for the long haul. It's like, okay, I'm producing something, I'm working with something, I've got a specific goal, but I know I'm also swimming against the current because things aren't necessarily in flow right now. This works best for something you've already been in the process of creating or making happen. As I said earlier, not as wonderful for, oh, this is my new launch, this is my new presentation, here it is, look at it. It's because it's challenging. It's people just aren't feeling it in the way that they would have 2 months ago or even last month. And dovetailing this with other things happening right now is a sense of wanting to know what's ahead. We don't really know what's ahead. So that buoyancy of, as I talked about last week, the coming off the eclipses energy of where we're pushing or where we're lighting up has so much to do with, are you in partnerships that really support whatever the overall goals are? And if you're not, then this period is a good time to evaluate, where is the lack, why is the lack, and how can I put things in place so that when Jupiter's direct, I'm inviting in something that's a lot more supportive and has a lot more potential for growth. So Thursday the 10th, as I said, we're building on that strategic energy. One thing to note is in the early evening, late afternoon, tempers can be short. And so, choose your arguments, decide what you want or need to engage with, because it will also pass. By the time we get to 7 o'clock in the evening, a lot of what was riling people up should start to quiet and ebb. And so there's no point poking the bear if you can sort of dance around it until tempers are cooler and people can listen better. Especially those who are in the same frame as you and working towards the same goal. These are the people, we may get a little energetically frayed, but what we want to do is not engage with that, but basically keep our eye on what we're doing to get ahead with what it is we want to make happen. So I can't stress enough the value in really taking to heart the positive messages of Neptune's travel through Pisces, which we're almost at the end of. But to me, it's been a very difficult passage. The outer planets take years to go through a sign, and Neptune in the sign of Pisces has been very symbolic of the erosion of how we do finances, which also is indicated by Pluto in Capricorn. Actually, these two energies are emphasizing this point in time where institutions dissolving, status quo just kind of melting away from how we know it, and a lot of confusion about what comes next, and the acceptance and daily habits of self-medicating, which is also a way of canceling someone's ability to respond in immediacy and clarity. So some of us may want to look at that, am I able to move with action when I want to? Or am I in habits that decrease my effectiveness in response? We're able to respond pretty well if we're just coming out of a meditation or a yoga practice or listening to some music that allows us to drift and escape. Not so easy if we're really stoned or even drunk. And these aren't value judgments that I'm giving you at all. I definitely had a very different lifestyle when I was younger. And I came to realizations that I wanted more clarity. And when I see aspects like I've been seeing in these outer planet movements, we've been dealing with whole populations coming off of trauma, PTSD, the pandemic hangovers. And so there's a lot of reasons people have wanted to check out and escape. I totally get it. But the positive thrust is to have tools that allow us to relax and tap in to the void and yet be able to quickly respond and take action. So on Friday the 11th, the moon goes void, of course, at 11:53 a.m. It enters Aquarius at 12:31 p.m. And the other thing to note on this day is that Pluto will go direct. Now, when Pluto goes direct, not necessarily the day of, but certainly in the coming weeks, we will see revelations coming to the surface about intrigue, things that, are suddenly exposed, stuff comes out. And that's very interesting. So with that, over this weekend, with the moon in Aquarius, this is a weekend of a lot of action and change. Communication, connection, networking, all very volatile, but that doesn't mean it has to be like mean or violent. It just means that there's a lot of information. It's very dynamic. And you choose, who you want to spend time with, what you want to talk about, where you want to go with it. But it's a very dynamic weekend. The moon goes void, of course, at 10:11 a.m. on Sunday the 13th, and then it enters Pisces at 3:55 p.m. So that's a rather long span of time of a void of course moon. You definitely don't want to be starting anything that time. If you can avoid it, work on things already in motion, chill, clean off your desk, have conversations. Don't expect any of those agreements or conversations to stick. Gets so much better once that moon enters Pisces. That's when you want to shake hands, come to agreements. It actually is a really delicious late afternoon, evening for receiving the juice, the good stuff from whatever was discussed over the weekend, whatever connections were made. That point in time is when you want to really solidify or bring it home. And that's the week. I look forward to talking to you next week. As always, send me a note if you want to, make a comment. I'm happy to answer when I can. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.